the prosperous land of Phoenicia, along the shimmering shores of the Mediterranean Sea, a princess was born into wealth, power, and pagan worship. Her name was Jezebel, the daughter of Baal, king of the Sidonians, a man who was not only a ruler, but a high priest of Baal, the storm god. Phoenicia was a kingdom of grandeur, renowned for its mighty ships, sprawling trade routes, and devotion to Baal and Asherah, gods believed to bring fertility to the earth and strength to the people. Jezebel was groomed from childhood to be a queen, not just a figurehead, but a ruler of influence, ambition, and unwavering conviction. She was intelligent, fierce, and beautiful. Her dark eyes held fire, and her words were sharp and commanding. She was taught to hold loyalty to her gods above all else, to worship at Baal's altars, and to see herself as a vessel of power. When King Ahab of Israel sought a political alliance with Phoenicia, Jezebel became his bride. She left her homeland and its golden temples to cross the borders of Israel. But Jezebel did not leave her gods behind. She would bring her gods with her and reshape the land to her will. In Israel, Jezebel stepped into a kingdom divided, a people torn between worshiping Yahweh, the God of Israel, and turning to idols like Baal and Asherah. Ahab was a capable ruler, but spiritually weak. He quickly fell under Jezebel's influence, and together they built an era unlike any other. Jezebel brought change with relentless determination. She ordered the construction of a massive temple to Baal in Samaria, Israel's capital. Altars were raised, and priests of Baal flooded the land, chanting prayers to the storm god and igniting incense as offerings. Israel, once a nation devoted to Yahweh, began to fracture under her rule. The prophets of Yahweh rose against her, warning the king and the people of Israel of God's wrath. But Jezebel would not be challenged. She wielded the full power of the throne, declaring a brutal persecution of Yahweh's prophets. The land ran red with the blood of the faithful, as Jezebel hunted down and killed those who dared speak against her. In the shadows, some prophets hid, led by the bravery of a few faithful Israelites. Among them was Obadiah, a man loyal to Yahweh, who secretly protected 100 prophets, hiding them in caves and sustaining them with food and water. Jezebel's iron grip tightened, but resistance smoldered beneath her rule. One man stood as a fiery thorn in Jezebel's side, Elijah the prophet. A man of unyielding faith and uncompromising truth, Elijah confronted Ahab with a prophecy that sent shockwaves across Israel. As the Lord, the God of Israel, lives, there will be neither dew nor rain in the next few years except at my word. The drought came. The skies over Israel turned to brass. The once fertile fields withered. Rivers dried up, and famine spread across the land. Yet Jezebel remained defiant. She stood beside her priests of Baal and mocked the name of Yahweh. After 3 long years, Elijah emerged to challenge Jezebel and her prophets. On the slopes of Mount Carmel, before a gathering of Israelites, Elijah confronted 450 prophets of Baal in a contest to prove whose God was real. "Call on the name of your God," Elijah declared, "and I will call on the name of the Lord, the God who answers by fire. He is God." The prophets of Baal cried out from dawn to dusk, slashing themselves with swords and chanting, but no fire came. Then Elijah stepped forward. He repaired the altar of Yahweh, laid his sacrifice upon it, and poured water over it until it flowed into a trench. Raising his hands to heaven, he prayed, and fire fell, roaring, consuming the sacrifice, the wood, the stones, and the water. The crowd fell to their faces in awe. "The Lord, He is God," they cried. Elijah seized the prophets of Baal, and they were executed. When Jezebel heard of it, her fury burned hotter than the fire that fell. She sent a message to Elijah, "May the gods deal with me, be it ever so severely, if by this time tomorrow I do not make your life like one of theirs." Elijah fled into the wilderness, a hunted man, but Jezebel's defiance echoed across the land. Jezebel's ambitions did not stop at her religious crusades. When King Ahab desired the vineyard of Naboth, a humble man who refused to give up his ancestral land, Jezebel took matters into her own hands. She scorned Ahab's weakness and declared, "Is this how you act as king over Israel? Get up and eat. I'll get you the vineyard of Naboth." Using deceit and cruelty, Jezebel orchestrated Naboth's murder. She forged letters in Ahab's name, accusing Naboth of blasphemy, and had him stoned to death. Ahab took possession of the vineyard, but the act provoked the wrath of Yahweh. Elijah appeared again, delivering God's judgment. Dogs will devour Jezebel by the wall of Jezreel. Her crimes had been declared before heaven, and her judgment was sealed. Years later, after Ahab's death, Jezebel's son Joram ruled over Israel. But rebellion stirred in the form of Jehu, a warrior anointed by a prophet of Yahweh, to bring an end to Ahab's dynasty. Jehu rode to Jezreel, where Jezebel remained. Upon hearing of his arrival, the queen, now older but no less proud, prepared herself for her final act. She adorned herself in her royal garments, painted her eyes with kohl, and arranged her hair. She stood at the palace window, regal and defiant, a queen to the very end. As Jehu entered the city, Jezebel mocked him, calling him a traitor and murderer. But Jehu looked up and called out, "Who is on my side?" Her own eunuchs, long oppressed, seized their chance. They threw her from the window. Jezebel fell, her body striking the walls, blood splattering onto the horses below. Jehu entered the palace, but when he later ordered Jezebel's burial, her remains could not be found. Dogs had devoured her flesh, leaving only her skull, hands, and feet, just as Elijah had prophesied. Jezebel's life echoes through the ages as a story of ambition, power, and divine justice. Her name became synonymous with wickedness, idolatry, and rebellion against God. Yet Jezebel was a complex figure, a woman who wielded power in a male-dominated world, a queen whose influence shaped a nation, and a figure whose defiance ultimately led to her destruction. Her story stands as both a warning and a reminder. It speaks of the consequences of pride and unrepentance, but also of the unyielding power of God's justice. In the words of Scripture, "The Lord is slow to anger, but great in power. He will not leave the guilty unpunished." Nahum 1:3. Queen Jezebel's life remains an enthralling tale, a legacy of fire, fury, and a fall that shook the heavens.